broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning or good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Liz Burkhart with Agile Education Marketing, and I am also joined by Kara Murphy, who is going to be running our webinar a little bit behind the scenes, so thank you, Kara, for doing that. I also would like to welcome our panelists today from Education Market Experts, Brian Healy and Dr. Lori Vollandt. So today what we have for you is influencer marketing in education, and we're going to really focus a little bit more on K-12 today, but I think a lot of this just applies to any way that you're trying to use influencer marketing in education. So let me take a few minutes and go through some housekeeping items. We are recording today's session, and what that means for you is you will receive a link in the next 24 hours that will give you access to the recorded broadcast. So don't worry about internet going down. We're all in the same boat with, very limited bandwidth and kids trying to do their video calls and everything else. So please don't worry about it if you get cut off. You will get a link to all of this. We also have a lot more information from both Brian and Lori, so we'll be publishing more of a resource blog post here in the next few days. So just sit back and enjoy. What we've decided to do for our webinar today is go through a solid agenda, and these are the things that we'll be covering, but the way that we're going to cover it is that we're going to really let Brian and Lori talk about their business, share some information, and cover these things not in a checklist type of way, but really just share how they incorporate influencer marketing into helping their clients find success. So Brian and Lori, I'd like to hand it over to you if I could. And then, I'm sorry, first we have a poll. My apologies. We'd like to do a quick poll. And I believe, Kara, if you wouldn't mind, opening that for us. Thank you so much. We wanted to just get a feel for how familiar everyone is with influencer marketing. So, and part of the reason that I invited Lori and Brian to come and talk to all of us today is I really haven't done a whole lot with this. I've done content marketing and pulled in, experts from different areas, but I have not done a lot with influencer marketing. And so Brian and Lori, just so you guys know, it really looks like the vast majority of people that have joined us today really haven't done influencer marketing. So it's a 64 no, 36 yes split. So just to give you guys some insights into how you want to present to us today and talk in detail, probably going into more detail and giving us some of the groundwork and foundational thoughts would be super helpful to us today. So thank you, Karen, for doing that. So with that, I will hand it over to Brian and Lori. And if you want to give us a little bit of an overview of education marketing experts, and then a brief introduction of yourself, what you're bringing to the table, and then we'll go ahead and get into the content that you prepared for us today.
Great. Hey, thanks, Liz, for having us. We're excited to be with everyone today. My name's Brian Healy. I'm the founder and managing partner for Education Market Experts. What we do, simply put, is we help edupreneurs like all of you bring new innovation to schools, mostly K-12 schools, also in the higher ed space. And so we do that through our collective network, all of our team. We've got partners across the country. And so Lori and myself are, two of the partners in the firm. And so what we do is we work with lots of clients that are trying to figure out how to navigate the landscape and trying to grow and bring innovation to schools and districts. That's what we do. My personal background, I've started as a teacher, and then like a lot of us on this webinar today, found out, wow, there's a whole other side to education. The development side, whether it's curriculum or developing tech or being great at delivering PD. And so I've spent the last 25 years building various educational publishing and educational technology companies before selling a few of those, and now founding Education Market Experts, where we're both sharing our wisdom with folks like yourself, and then also at times, making some investments in some of our portfolio companies as well. So that's a bit about me. Lori, you want to talk a little bit about yourself?
Sure. My background is at health education, and that's what I got my degree in. But I lived in Silicon Valley and went to San Jose State, so I ended up in high tech after I graduated. So I actually was in semiconductor sales for many years, and my sales background, I think, really helped me in making the switch over into education. And about the age of 35, I decided I wanted to do something really meaningful, and so I went back to school and became a teacher. Spent 15 years in the classroom at Marshall High School in downtown LA, did a lot of entrepreneurial kinds of endeavors because I had that mindset that I needed to serve my clients. So my education, my background in actually customer service and in sales really helped me have a different mindset as far as education. So my principal was great. I started a medical clinic and a mental health clinic on our campus. I brought in over $5 million in grants to the school. So I really learned how to support systems within schools with the bureaucracy that existed. Then I went on to UCLA, got my master's and doctorate in education. Then I went into, as we call the belly of the beast, LA Unified, and really learned how you move a system. And so this today, what's interesting for me is I've been doing influencer marketing my whole life and not even know that it was called that. It's like finding the right messenger, finding the right push point, finding the right, pressure point. So that's what I did for 15 years in LA Unified, brought lots of programs in, millions of dollars in grants, different kinds of things that, just very entrepreneurial and very dynamic, which you don't necessarily think of in a school district, but those opportunities do exist. And then I retired and now I'm with Brian. So I'm happy. Happy.
Yeah, so Lori worked as a senior district administrator inside LA Unified for years, and that's where we got to know each other. Where I was bringing my various solutions to LA, and I had the good fortune of trying to sell into LA, and I had to sell into Lori, and ultimately we formed a great friendship, and now we're business partners, and it's wonderful. So, so for all of you out there thinking, wow. How the heck do you get into a large urban district like New York City or LA or Chicago or Miami-Dade, what have you? At the end of the day, it really is about relationships. And when we talk about influencer marketing for the rest of the session here today, what we can tell you is Lori said she was doing it on her side, right? On the buying side, from a district senior administrator side. And then from my side, from building education companies, simply stated, gang, it works, and it works really well, especially in education, because our industry lends itself to our amazing partners and teachers and districts. They want to help, right? And they want to spread the word about things that are really working for them, especially right now in the land of COVID. My gosh, this is a great time. We think influencer marketing should be a key component, kind of a key component of each marketing plan. And so we'll talk a little bit more about that in the next slides. So Liz, you want to kind of keep rolling?
Yeah, and Brian and Lori, I failed to mention that we're going to hold questions to the end. And so thank you both very much for that. And I think that will help people sort of understand your background. And so feel free to ask questions. We'll get to those at the end. Use the question box on the right. If you have technical difficulties, they might not be on our end. They might be on your end. Don't worry, you'll get the link. But use the chat, and Kara will help you out as best she can. So thank you both for that. I appreciate it. And yeah, let's get started.
Yeah, great. Yeah, so one of the most important things, one of the key takeaways from today is we think, we know influencer marketing works in education without question. However, I just ask each of you right now, looking at yourself, looking at your organization, what type of sales channel strategy do you have? When you look at this graph, right, this bell-shaped curve, if you're on the far right of this curve, are you offering, is your solutions more transaction oriented? Are you selling things that people can order online without having to engage with a person, right? So when you think of the far right, think of Amazon, think of like even cosmetics. And we think of here's an example of who is one of the most prominent influential marketers in the world on the far right-hand side here, promoting cosmetics. I think it's Kendall Jenner, right? The Kardashians. So think of, there's different types of influencer marketing, right? And for most of us today, most of our models in ed tech or ed publishing or PD, we're on the left side of this curve. That's kind of what our sales, right? We have to have relationships with our districts, with our principals, with our teachers, for them to like us, for them to trust us, and then once that foundation of trust is built, then they're open to trying things and ultimately becoming a great partner. So if your current organizational structure is more to the left of this, right? If it's more of a relational sales model, this is where influencer marketing in K-12 is even more important, okay? So Liz, let me keep going. So our good friends at EdWeek, they've been doing a lot of surveys over the past really like 3 months in the era of COVID. And this is really, really important to understand right now, right? In the land of COVID, we all, teachers, administrators, everybody got thrown in the deep end of the pool, in late March. There was no lifeguards around, and we all had to figure out, are we going to sink or swim? And so EdWeek's done a great job of going out and really trying to get to the heart of, well, how are decision makers and in districts and building level, how are they getting information about new solutions like what I may potentially have? And this data was, I think it was close to 900 different district administrators from around the country. I think this is about 2 months old. And it's, when you look at how are people finding out about newer solutions right now in the era of COVID, as crazy as it sounds, good old-fashioned email from companies just like you are the ways that people are finding out. But when you look at the other green stars on the left side and kind of the yellow stars on the left side, all of those referrals, right? Different districts, recommendations, right? Those are all influencer marketing kind of ways that people are finding out about new cool solutions like a lot of you have, right? So one of the things we just want to make sure is, hey, remember, email is old. It seems very archaic at times, but in the land of COVID and what's happening right now, this is what the data is telling us as to how districts and how building level principals are finding out about new solutions like yours. You can go next, Liz. So in terms of, okay, great. So email works pretty well in free trials and recommendations via influencer marketing. Great. Okay, I get that. But then, well, who am I able to engage with, right? Similar study. Well, for us, what was really interesting is principals are the most common way to engage with a new building level decision maker. Well, then the question was, why is that? Well, think of how a principal's job has changed since COVID, right? Pre-COVID, you go back to January, February, a principal's job was really working with teachers and families and parents, right? They were the most difficult to get a hold of. Well, now we're in remote virtual schools. How's the principal's job changed? They're not dealing with as much of that face-to-face. So they're more open to receiving, potential communications about potential new solutions like yourself.
And Brian, the other thing about COVID and principals that I've talked to principals about, they're just glued to their computers now, to their screens. They're not walking around. They're not going to classrooms. They're actually more accessible via email because it's constantly popping up. So it's not like they get to walk away, come back. It's like it's always there, which is one of the things the stressors they're talking about is that it's not my job used to be 12 hours a day, and now it's like almost 24. So it's really interesting. So having that viewpoint of they're so glued into their screens now. So
so anyway, so these are the types of people that have been more open to engagement. And then let's keep it going. And I promise this is the last data slide. And this is really more from the supplier community like us, right? Everyone that's on this most of us on this webinar. So this was asking company leaders a lot in sales and marketing, again, about a month or so ago, in terms of productive engagements, right, with districts and decision leaders, what conditions, right, have proved essential to actually having sales success in COVID right now? And clearly the data is just jumping off the screen. Districts or schools that you already have relationships with, that's the key, right? So for all of you that have, your solutions in schools and districts, our advice to our clients that we're working with is we got to double down, right? We got to make sure they're supported, they're loved, they're nurtured, they're feeling it. We like to say we're vibing together. And for those of you that aren't in any schools or districts yet, you're just in that early stage, you're in startup mode, right? It's a tough environment. It's a really tough environment because schools and districts are wanting to work with partners that they know and trust. Okay, so Lori, any other comments before we keep moving onward?
No, I think it's really important that issue around existing clients, because we're going to talk a little bit later about a company that I started working with when they were very young, and they're growing. And then the way they do it is they really highlight their partnerships with districts. So not only are they highlighting their product, they're highlighting the relationship. So I think that's really, really important, is that, you are in partnership with the district and they need to know that, you have their back and vice versa. But highlighting that in some way through marketing is really very powerful, because as a district administrator, I would go and see who else is using this and how is the relationship? One of the questions we first ask is, what's it like to work with them? So, so my colleagues would definitely become influencers in other districts. So that's it.
Okay, so Liz, we could keep rolling. Okay, so now we're going to kind of, we're calling this Tales from the Test Lab, or Tales from the Front Line here. So Lori and I mean, this, and like all of us, right, today on this webinar, this is what we're doing every day. We're out, we're talking with principals, we're talking with soups, assistant soups, we're working with our content development teams, our tech teams, right? All of the things that we have to, we're juggling all the different plates to ensure, most importantly, that we're over-delivering on our promise of serving teachers and serving the kiddos, right? That's the golden rule for all of us. So, so we're going to talk about a couple of different clients that we're working with, and this is all, as of yesterday, like in terms of data intel and how influencer marketing is playing out. But before we get into the story, one of the questions is, well, what is influencer marketing? Right? And, there's a lot of different definitions of it, but my simple way that I kind of absorb it and I think about it is influencer marketing is really a form of collaboration between all of us as educational company representatives, right? With influential people. Oftentimes they are our customers, and oftentimes they're the users and teachers or principals, right? Whatever the solution is. And they become so passionate about your solution and the benefits they're seeing within their own schools that they're open to getting closer, developing a more tighter relationship with you, with your company. And so that then turns to, okay, well, let's discuss how can you potentially help talk to other schools and districts in your areas, in your communities, about your experience that you're experiencing with us, right? So then it becomes into how can we help promote this to other schools and districts so they can have the same results that I'm getting in mine. So really that's what it is. I view influencer marketing as a form of collaboration between all of us and all of our select users that we know and we trust as being great advocates for the organization. Then, kind of the other question is, well, how has COVID changed the influencer marketing landscape? Because it has tremendously. And simply put is the pandemic has sped up what we've experienced. It's sped up the changes that were already underway. So, you know, these trends now for towards more unfiltered or less scripted content, you know, the rise of TikTok, the popularity of everyday influencers, right? These types of things. This is really important because the need for high polish video and high polish traditional marketing content development, we've seen that high level come down dramatically, right? So now a lot of content that influencers use, they're developing it themselves. They're filming themselves. Seeing a really dramatic shift in terms of how schools and districts are being influenced by others in lesser developed and polished kind of content areas. So that's kind of one other thing. And the other thing is the shift in power at districts. And Lori can talk about this, right? Folks, you know, especially in remote learning, you know, those folks, you know, 6 months ago, you have a junior coordinator involved with virtual or remote learning at the district. Now, these folks, these are key people involved in decision-making, reporting directly to the superintendent in a lot of cases. So Lori, you want to kind of talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, this is really important because I was talking to Brian about this yesterday, that the sphere of influence, or the, you know, who sits at the table now is definitely going to include somebody that's in that technology sphere. Whereas before it might not have been a focal point. Now that their expertise internally is really, really important. And I'll give you sort of a different kind of an example. Whenever there was a crisis in LA Unified that had something to do with my department, I was called straight up to the superintendent's office. I would never get any access otherwise. So that shift in who's at the table is really, really important right now. And understanding with influence marketing, we have to really pay attention to what the trends are and what's important to them. And then you know what expertise is going to be called in to problem solve. And so this is not just obviously in you know, education, but everywhere. But right now, it really, really, the technology experts are the ones that have so much influence over what's going to happen. Whereas before, you might have to sit with the curriculum development people. You might have to, but technology right now is number one.
Yeah, and then another common question we get is, well, why are education brands turning to influencers now during the pandemic? Well, pretty simple, straightforward answer. Educators are cooped up at home, right? They're crazy like all of us. We're attending another webinar, influencer marketing, for Christ's sakes. You know, my God, I'm sick of Zoom. I'm sick of this stuff, right? And so are our customers. So are our educators, our teachers, our principals. They're cooped up. And they've been spending more time on social media, more time interacting with their education publishing or edtech partner companies, right? And so these folks can right now provide, we're seeing it all the time, they're providing their brand, education brands, their suppliers, with quick, less expensive, and easy to produce creative content at home, right? When, as I said earlier, at a time when large scale ad production is really difficult right now for most marketing teams in this current world. So we're seeing it, it's real. And especially now when people are still cooped up at home, more than ever, influencer marketing is pretty good, pretty big. So Lori, you want to talk a little bit about, this is one of our current clients. We're calling it client example number 1. You want to talk a little bit about from a year ago to now.
I guess we can't use their name, right?
No, not
how
yet.
polished I am at this, you guys. Hey, if I can do this, anybody can. I'm telling you. I'm not just teasing you. Well, this is an interesting one, and Brian, you could fill in the blanks, because the deal with this company is that they were getting ready to go out and work with districts, but they weren't quite. They had done a lot of the developmental work, and then when COVID hit, it really released them into a whole nother space. And so what they've done is, because their solution is so tech oriented, and that their land and expand marketing is really working, that word of mouth from the original districts that they were working with, they have expanded really, really rapidly. And the other thing I think is really important about this influencer marketing with this company is that they really listen to their client. They listen to their clients and they adapt to what their client is asking for, because now what happens is that your school district is now your influencer, because what they're telling you, what they're relaying to everybody is that this company is working with me, they're responding to me, they're meeting my need, and it's my need, so they're working with me, so it's personalized now, right? It's not like this cold product, it's like they're my partner. And so now they have some kind of they have some sort of a, I'm trying to what the word, they're buying into what you're selling. So they become part of your sales force. Because I'll tell you what, I have noticed in school districts, if somebody really likes the product and they say, oh, they're so easy to work with, they listen to us, they have a great solution, then that person becomes your spokesperson. And so I found this a lot. And when I would go out and look for a company to find a solution, I would go to my peers and say, who are you working with? You know, what is it that they're giving you? Do you think they can work with us? Can they scale? Can you work to scale? So I don't know exactly what you wanted me to get to, Brian, but I think that for this, the fact that these people are landing and expanding is really due to the fact that they are really responsive to their client base, and that their client base now has become influencer marketers for them.
Yeah, in a really big way. And like many of you, this was a startup in 2019. And, you know, the whole learning management space, curriculum management space, you know, there's a lot of competition in that world. And, you know, the key thing here is, you know, as Lori said, over delivering on your early customers, right, that come on board. And to take it a step further is, well, if we wanted to, you know, start with one district in the first year, and then the second district, or in year number 2, you know, our whole budget, our cash flow, all of our survival is based on signing up 15 new districts. You know, there's a pretty big energy around us surviving. We got to change the way we do things. So, you know, and this is a separate topic, but the whole spray and pray marketing, right? Throw spaghetti against the wall and let's see what sticks. That is old school 1980s. That just doesn't work in our current world.
And it's very anxiety producing, because you're using all this revenue and you don't know where it's going, how to track it, or what's effective. So, yeah, you know, this is really, really important, that you figure out where you want to go and how you want to, and who your partners will be. And you really, really need to look at districts as partners. And the other thing I will say, that if you feature a district or a person on your website or in a webinar, that buy-in is huge, especially for teachers. And don't forget students. If you have the kind of product that affects a student and that student's life has changed, which happens a lot, those are very powerful voices for you, especially if they're over, you know, like they're a young adult. And anyway, it can be very powerful for you to use those voices as well. So your influencers, maybe your littlest people, or your parents. It could be anybody. It doesn't have to be like a celebrity like Brian, you know.
Far from it.
Or Liz.
Yeah, far from it.
I found that school districts really, really respond to the end user. They do.
Yeah, one of the kind of tidbits for today, and I would encourage you to write this down. If there's any way that all of you on this session today, one of the things we're really hearing from districts right now is, hey, if you can help us with student engagement at home in this new world of virtual learning, that's like kind of, you know, in bright lights shining. So, you know, again, it's all about the, you know, teachers and students having success, but there's a big emphasis right now on students having engagement, which leads to success in the new world of COVID virtual learning. So going back to this client, really what it boiled down to was what we were forced to do is to be disciplined in our influencer marketing approach.
Yeah.
Forget spray and pray. What we had to do is we had to use data and analytics to determine what is the most likely path to growth to add 15 districts so we can survive. And then we can really start expanding from there. And ultimately, what worked really well was the whole, a very segmented outreach approach, with similar sized districts, similar sized testing scores, similar size solutions that they're using, right? And really building the value proposition around why this is not a nice to have, but a must have, right? For these solutions. So using that, being very disciplined about the approach and very disciplined about how we're going to use key influencers to start expanding into districts in the area. As of last week, we've now closed 17 new districts at a deal size 5 times what we thought it was going to be, right? And we've got 65 additional districts that are in pilot or trial right now, and we're expecting at least half of those to convert over the next 30 days. So it can be done. It can certainly be done in the land of COVID. A whole separate topic is funding, right? CARES Act dollars that are coming down. We do a lot of work in that space, and using the segmentation with funding intelligence, we found that's kind of the secret sauce, at least in this particular success story. So Liz, you want to move on to the next one? Yeah, so this was another interesting one, and this is actually one from about 3 years ago, but we think it's really relevant because this was a startup assessment company, and a bunch of young folks, awesome people, great, right? Huge ambition, but startup, didn't have any clients, but their whole business plan was, hey, we're going to go out and we're going to work with the largest mega districts in the country. That's all we care about, right? That's it. Well, for those of you at home, it doesn't take a whole lot to really understand. It's a whole lot more challenging to sell into LA Unified, than it is to a small or rural district that has, 1 or 2 school buildings, right? As opposed to New York City that has 1,600 buildings, or LA Unified that has close to 1,000 buildings. It's a much different animal. So, looking at this example of how this early stage assessment company, they bet all of their chips, imagining being at a roulette table in Vegas. You got to put all your chips on black or red. They bet our whole business model is we're betting on black, and we're betting on large districts. And ironically, my business partner here, Dr. Lori, she was on the buying end of this one. So Lori, you want to share a little bit about how the influencers helped you make a decision to bring them into the second largest district in the country?
This was a really interesting one because I didn't know where to go. I had no clue how to find the right people for what I needed. So I called one of my vendors who sort of works in that same sphere, and I asked them for a referral. And they referred me to this company, which ironically, the founder of is an LA Unified graduate. So we had that connection right away. So I used an influencer to send me in the right direction. And so what happened was we decided to move forward together. But I was nervous. I got to tell you, I was very nervous because for a young company to come into LA Unified, we could suck them dry in a minute. I mean, we could suck every resource out of anybody who walked through the door. And since this was a young company, and we were demanding a lot of it, we trained hundreds and hundreds of principals and hundreds of teachers. And they sent out, their folks, and it was scary to me. I was nervous, but it worked out really well because what they did is they took the time to make sure that we had what we needed, that they answered all our questions. An incredibly great product. And now I go on their website and they've expanded their product offering to meet the needs again of their clients. So they got in, they figured out how to customize a solution, because everybody wants something that's somewhat customized because they want to feel special, right? But that also gets them into your lane of being involved in your product development, even if it's tiny, but they are more of a partner with you now. So that's actually what happened. And it kind of changed the face of the program that I administered because it gave it more legitimacy because of the assessment piece. But this company has gone on, and I got to tell you, for those of you hiring folks, these folks are going to become the influencers of tomorrow. So I take a really long view of market influencers, because you're going to be growing them. You're not just going to like, here's my person and it's going to happen, but you definitely need to think about, how do I grow the folks in my market to become influencers? I don't know if I answered all the questions, Brian, but.
Yep, that's great.
Okay.
Okay, so a couple of other questions that are kind of common to us that come in are, what's unique about, marketing using education market influencers, right? So really is, the answer is the greater expectations to maintain, right, your reputation for your individual organizations as teachers in their community, right? So it's really important. It's all about reputation, right? Really, really important. How to find influencers, right, to support reaching your goals. How can you connect with people? How do you do it? How do you find them? Well, what we always start with is look at your current customer base, right? Look at those passionate customers that you hear from, right? The ones that care. I think that's the key word here is they care. They care about how they're using it. They care about their kiddos in the classroom. And then really, beginning to have a relationship with those folks. Take their phone call, send an email, send them a birthday note, right? Those little things I've found in the years of doing this at all the companies that I've run are really, really important. It connects that personal level of connection is really important, right? Then it gets into, well, how do you design programs for influencers, right? For these different, it's kind of weird because they're customers, they're buying from me, but we want to have them kind of also help kind of promote. Well, there's different ways to do it, right? And again, going back to, if these are customers or people that are actually care and they're using your solutions and they're really proud of it, talking about their experience, oftentimes we found people are really happy to do that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Want to share their experience and they want to share your solution with others, their peers, other districts, other areas, because it's working. That's the key. And along the way, if you can, sprinkle in some free product for them, if you can, some of them, you use them as speakers, in the local speaking circuit where they get recognition. They could be, that sage on the stage and they feel good. They feel more connected to your organization. Those are the types of ways that, most oftentimes education companies compensate those influential marketers that are working with them. Now, on the other end of the spectrum, if it's superintendents and you need superintendents to be your influencers to get into other large districts, that's a little different, right? However, what's not different is having superintendents sharing their experiences. If their experiences are good, they're solid, you're over delivering. We have found that there's many superintendents that are willing to share what they've experienced working with your organization. And that in itself is a form of influencer marketing. It
definitely is really important. I know principals would get together and have coffee in the morning and talk. And those superintendents all talk. They all talk. So it's important that you find your person who can do your 30-second elevator speech, and it's not you. And when I said I did influencer marketing within LA Unified, I had to market inside my own organization to help people understand the importance of what I was trying to propose. Because sometimes it couldn't be me. Sometimes it had to be either a teacher, or it could be a union member, or it could be a board member, it could be a parent. Who is it that I felt was going to have the most influence over that group I was trying to influence? And a lot of times it was not me. And so that's the other thing, is that really look holistically at an organization. Don't think one path in, curriculum and development, and they slam the door. Well, there's lots of other doors. It doesn't mean that that's the only door you can go through. But I mean, you got to have some sensitivity to the organization. But sometimes parents are some of the best ways to get in to a company.
Lori, what a great setup. So is everyone ready to take some additional notes on from Dr. Lori and Brian's perspective, at least? You know, we're going to share now the 5 steps, right, to find the right influencers for your solutions. So, so looking at the 5 steps here, right? Number 1 is really, really important, right? 2, 3, 4, and 5, they kind of speak for themselves.
Yeah.
But number 1 is really important because it's the 3 R's, right? Relevance, reach, and resonance. Then your question is, well, what does that mean? Well, we're going to, as Liz mentioned at the beginning, we have like specific blog articles and stuff on all of this. So Liz is going to be posting that. So a lot more detail behind the 5 steps. But really what relevance is, right, is finding a relevant influencer that shares content, right, relevant to your solution. So if you're trying to, you know, if you're in the ed tech space and you're in the LMS, learning management space, does it make sense for you to have an influencer who's in the early literacy space? Probably not, right? So ensuring people have relevance. Trust me, we see it all the time. You get people that are not relevant to the solution that, right, you're providing. Reach. So reach is the number of people that you could potentially reach through your influencer's follower base. So this goes back to the same question. Well, is it worth your time and effort to build up a group of influencers, but they don't have any followers, right? They don't have influence. They can't, you know, get meetings with their principal. They can't get meetings with their superintendent, right? So using some level of judgment as to what the reach is, that's really important when you're setting up an influencer program. And then resonance, right? So this is the whole potential level of engagement that the influencer can create with the audience, right, relevant to your brand. So if you're selling at the transactional level, right, you need more of a Kardashian. If you're selling at the relational level like us, and we're selling, let's say, literacy solutions, so probably finding a literacy champ, you know, a literacy specialist, somebody in that sphere within the district, probably a pretty good idea, right? So those things are really important. And lastly, in terms of number 1, the 3 R's, bigger isn't always better.
Right.
And, you know, a big following is meaningless, right? If those followers aren't interested in your potential solution, right? So having Kylie Jenner represent your early literacy company right now, how do you think that would go? I don't know, right? Don't know. So anyways, okay. So Lori, do you want to add anything else on the 3 R's at this point?
No, I just think it's really important to look holistically at a school district. Look at all the different influencing that already exists. I tend to work a lot through PTA and parents to get my influence into the district, even though I was in the district. I kind of had a French resistance sort of approach to working in that bureaucracy. So I had to find the right group to carry the message forward. And my fingerprints weren't even on stuff a lot of the times. And so the good thing is if you get multiple folks saying basically the same thing coming from different angles, then people in meetings are going to go, oh, yeah, I heard about that over here. Or, oh, yeah, I heard about that from them. Oh, yeah, they said something about that. So it's just not a single drive through the door. You know, it can be much more nuanced than that. So I think those are all our relevance, reach, and resonance that are really, really important.
Yeah, and then on the number 2, you know who you're trying to influence and what matters to them, right? That's obvious, very obvious, but really kind of the action item on this one for everyone is develop an audience persona, right? Write it down. So who's the audience? What's the persona? What do they look like? What's their age? What department are they in, right? Literally, you know, try to identify who is that persona, and make sure you understand it in you know, because this is what you're going to be building influencer marketing around. And once you've develop this audience persona, you can create a matching set of influencer personas, right? So this will help you better understand the qualities, right, that you're looking for in your influencers. Okay, so audience persona, influence persona, try to see how they match, and that should help you determine, all right, is it worth investing in this influencer for our marketing, a piece of our marketing program. So number 3, it's about trust, right? Trust, trust, trust. We keep talking about that because the audience got to trust. They got to trust the solution. They got to trust you, trust your opinion. Without trust, everything is superficial, as we all know. So in terms of 4, go for the consistent look, feel, tone, and values. Again, finding that person, right, that advocate who's using your offerings, they're an expert in them, and producing content for them with a look and feel that complements that's coming from the corporate office. Because oftentimes, user-generated content from influencers is great, but if there's no curation of it, sometimes it can go off the rails, right? So finding those, again, built into your audience persona or your influencer personas, right? Are they more apt to go off the rails with their content, or are they going to be kind of using what we're developing at home office to then, push throughout their influencer audiences?
So that's really important because you want to make sure that the message is clean and clear. In fact, with some folks I work with, I gave them media training so they would actually know, really how to do it. And it's because sometimes people can go off on a bird walk, which I'm very famous for. So actually training folks to really be succinct and, really clear influencers and making sure that they stay on point and giving them those tools, not just to control them, but really giving them the tools to be most effective.
Yeah. Okay. And then lastly, budget-wise. So influencers, right, that have extensive reach, that are really committed to us, committed to the end of K-12, and they're all about it. Most people feel awkward around getting some form of compensation. However, we have found recognizing them in different ways to be paid for their work is absolutely critical. So like I said, free product, free subscriptions, a lot of that is, goes a long way. But some people expect to be paid. That could be either through a monthly stipend, that could be through some commission percentage on the back end, right? Again, it kind of depends on that influencer persona, right? Who are they? Who are you wanting them to potentially influence? And then the last thing in terms of planning your budget is be wary of ethical and legal issues for influencers.
Right.
Lori can talk quickly about that.
Yeah, well, I didn't always follow all the rules, and and I should have.
That's a shocker,
I know more
Lori.
now. But make sure that you're not putting somebody in jeopardy because legally they can't accept certain kinds of things. The other thing I would say, though, on the last part, what Brian was talking about, advisory boards are a great way to bring people in. Put them on an advisory board quarterly, whatever it is. People really like that. They put it on their resume. They're proud of the fact that a company's asking them their opinion. And it draws them into the organization as a partner and someone who feels like they're having some kind of a control over their own environment, which it's really important. So advisory boards, I highly recommend for those people that you want to bring closer to you.
Yeah. So Liz, that's it for our side.
Thank you very much, both of you. As always, I appreciate the thought and care that you give to these sessions that we put together. There's a couple things. There's a couple things that resonated with me that I wanted to just reiterate out to our audience, because again, we do these and we bring in people like you, Brian, and Lori, because we want our clients to be successful. And we, I don't do influencer marketing. It's not something that we get into, but I know, and especially with COVID being here, this can be an excellent way to get into schools, to serve them better, and to do more with your business and find success. So I just truly thank you both very, very much. You always make it interesting and you bring really great information. So the couple things that kind of stood out to me was, the lower production value right now with some of the content. And it also struck me, making sure that content is shareable would be another thing that would be super helpful, especially because the influencer model in education is, you're probably, to be successful, you're going to have a much larger group of them. And so being able to create one piece of content that really is succinct and gives the accurate, correct highlights about what your product service does in the classroom, in the school, will be helpful, and it will also be kind of a force multiplier for you as an organization. And so the reduction in expectations around production value sort of go hand in hand with being able to create that shareable content. So I think that's something for everyone to really consider. And then, the power shift that you were talking about, Lori, and that the IT people and operations people are much more involved, especially right now. And I think, as a parent, my district has offered sort of two flavors of learning for this year. And right now it's parental choice. And so coupled with that is, at Agile, we did a lot of research, really firsthand research, literally going out to different district websites, trying to understand what the landscape looks like right now. And overwhelmingly, districts have decided on parent choice. So I think parents have always been influential. I just want to make sure that, Lori, your point isn't lost, and Brian too. Parents are highly influential right now with how their children are going to consume their education. And so understanding that and getting with some of the different groups and organizations, the parent-teacher organization, will be really helpful for you. And that's another level of influencer marketing. So that's something I think, I wanted to highlight because it's so critical right now. Let me look over my notes. The funding piece, yes. I love that you mentioned media training. I think it can be, and I think, Lori, you touched on this a little bit, it can be very daunting, and I've experienced that too in Agile, coming on board here a couple of years ago at my own company right now. I know the caliber of people that we have working for us, and they are so knowledgeable. They don't have a lot of experience with presenting and presenting themselves or presenting their information. So I think that's a really important thing for organizations to understand, and it's okay. And it's just another way of teaching and learning and giving people the skills and confidence to do things really well. So thank you, Lori, for bringing that up. I want to close really quickly. I think you covered everything, and you also covered the controversy piece of it, which I was waiting for. So thank you for that. I had that underlined, but you definitely covered that, and I appreciate it. Keeping in mind too that Brian and Lori put together a pretty exhaustive and extensive resource that we'll be publishing here in a day or two. So everyone's going to get that. And so, Kara, I believe you had one last poll for us. And then if any questions have come through, I believe, Kara, you would have those, and we can get to those right after our poll. So yeah, so let's check in with everyone and see how confident everyone feels, Brian and Lori, with what you've shared and their ability to move forward with this. I know I feel a lot better about it. I think I can possibly use this myself to get in front of more people. So let's see, we're still okay. So yeah, so nearly everybody, 82%, say yes. Thumbs up, they're going to try it, and I think that's really great, and I think that everyone's going to find a lot of success with that. Tara, did we have other questions, things that we hadn't covered?
Liz, I just want to say something really quickly. I think about influencer marketing like this. When my son was a teenager and a preteen, if I wanted to get him to do something, it wasn't like I could always be the person. I would go to his friends, I would go to his friends' mothers, I would go to his cousins or his uncles. And so the message didn't always come from me, but it was definitely me behind the scenes asking them to influence his thinking, because sometimes the person in front of you cannot be the one that's doing it. So really think in those terms. Who around you can deliver messages so it doesn't necessarily have to be you. So that's a real big influence. If you're trying to influence a teenager, that's a big one.
It's a great point, and I think too, putting it into words that are common and known and understood for whatever it is that you're trying to get into a school or district. Everyone uses different words, and that can be a huge barrier. People just have no idea, especially with Google and search, everything is text. So if your website has a certain way of describing something that only half the country describes it in that way, you're missing out. And so influencers can be a really good way to get those, I don't know, the vernacular down for how different districts talk about things. So I think it just makes a ton of sense. And I really appreciate that you guys took the time to walk us through some of the considerations, the ways to find success, and helping us all understand, and again, so now everyone who joined us today can go back to their own stakeholder teams and be influencers for influence marketing and share data, points, case studies. I mean, this is how it works. This is how business is done, especially right now with people being remote. So,
Hey, Liz,
from Agile,
and one thing, if any of you are kind of nervous about, whoa, I want to kind of learn more, or this is what we do, right? We work with companies like yours. So you can just go to educationmarketexperts.com. You can read more about me and Lori and our team. And if you have any interest, let us know. We do a free consult just to get to know each other and see if it's a fit. So let us know if you are interested in having a discussion. Thanks, Liz.
Yeah, thank you so much for that invitation. And we'll include your contact information in the email that has the link. And I think, from the Agile side, we're such a great complement to each other. Lori and Brian are really on the sales side, and we really focus mainly on the marketing side. So, some of the things that Brian talked about, in terms of segmentation, understanding the funding, the enrollment level, on the Agile side, we have all of that information. And if you're a client of ours, you can, just add it. You might want to expand your titles based on some of the things that are happening right now that Brian and Lori brought up. That's fine. Get in touch with your rep. We also have virtual readiness score data available. We have school opening data available, and we have all of that funding, a whole bunch of stats. So we can make your data just paint a better picture for you and help you segment and tailor your messaging and your outreach from a marketing perspective, and give your sales team a lot of rich data as well. So don't hesitate to reach out to Brian and Lori, to reach out to your Agile rep, and figure out how you can improve what you're already doing and make a difference. You guys have a lot of really great solutions, and so we're here to really help you connect with the right people to make a difference in, for the principals and the teachers and parents. Please help our kids do better online. So with that, I think we're, let's see, Kara, I just want to do one more check-in. Do we have any questions? And then we can wrap up.
Yes. This will be recorded again. So just to be, if you have to jump off, you'll still get this question. If you can stay, great. I kind of rounded it up. One of the charts that you guys shared showed that principals right now were the highest people that are kind of making the decisions for the schools since COVID came into place. And I'm doing quotes in my head. Will that still be the case now that this transition has happened when things go back to quote unquote normal?
Great question. We'll see. Yeah, we don't know, right? What we do know is remote and virtual learning is here to stay. It may not be 100% of the time, but every district we're working with, every client that's, whether you're a curriculum company or a technology company or PD company, everyone is of the same belief that this is here to stay in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting, and that was a really great point, and that's a great question, because I've always pushed making sure you get in front of teachers and their deputized and influencers. So that's fascinating to find that principals are, really more more the actual person and the right contact. One final thing I wanted to share, someone who joined us, Sheldon, just offered up an idea for everyone to work backwards to figure out who might be an influential person, reading LinkedIn and bio, but sometimes doing really a little bit of different research is something too. So thank you for that. Really appreciate it. And yes, so yeah, this recording will be shared, and if you want a copy of the deck, I believe there's a way to get to it, so that information will be there. So Kara, thank you so much for keeping things running. That's a really important job, and I appreciate everything you do. Brian and Lori, again, as always, really appreciated today's session. Appreciate that you put it together in practically real time, because everything changes so quickly right now, and so that means a lot to me and to everyone that joined us, and everyone who took the time to join us today. Appreciate it. Don't hesitate to reach out. We want you guys to be successful and make a difference. So have a great day. Thank you again, and we'll be back with you next month. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. See ya.